بریتانیا یکی از کشورهایی است که در یک دهه اخیر کمک‌های زیاد به افغانستان کرده. کمک‌های بیشتر بریتانیا در بخش ملکی توسط اداره توسعه بین المللی یا دفید در افغانستان انجام میشه که این نهاد نه تنها در افغانستان بلکه در منطقه کشورهای زیاد را کمک میکنه. در گفتگوی ویژه امروزی آقای معظم ملک، رئیس بخش آسیای غربی نهاد توسعه بین المللی بریتانیا را با خود داریم و در مورد کمک‌های انجام شده و همچنان کمک‌های پیشروی بریتانیا در افغانستان با ایشان گفتگو خواهیم کرد. Thanks Mr. Malik for your time.
Pleasure. It's good to be here.
So let me ask you about the projects. How much the UK has spent in Afghanistan on development projects in Arikat?
Maybe I might say a first word about what DFID is. I don't know whether your listeners would find that useful. But DFID is the arm of the British government that provides development assistance to poor countries around the world. We were set up in 1997, and by Act of Parliament, development assistance from the UK has to be focused on reducing poverty. So the UK cannot give development assistance for some commercial purpose or for some political purpose or for other purposes. It has to be focused on reducing poverty. And if we breach the terms of our Act, then of course our NGOs, who are very, very active in the UK, can always test us. So that's a very important element in what we do, because it means that the way that we use international development assistance has to be focused on benefiting the people who live in the poor country. So that's a very important principle for us, and perhaps that's the most progressive legislative framework for development assistance anywhere in the world. Now in Afghanistan, we have been present in Afghanistan for many years. We were providing humanitarian assistance even in the time of the Taliban period. And since then, we have of course been an important partner for the Afghan government and the Afghan people, because we are very committed to providing assistance to really change the lives of people who live in this country. They've suffered from 30 years of conflict, so the conditions are very bad, and we can perhaps talk about the conditions. So there is a lot to do. They increased the development budget that we have for Afghanistan, and our budget now is £178 million a year. That's almost $270 million a year. Our plan is to provide that level of assistance every year. So in our country we have a 4-year budget framework. So I know my budget for Afghanistan. It will be £178 million a year for 4 years. And that's the period of our budget settlement. Then as we proceed through this budget settlement, we will have a new budget round, and we will see how much we can budget for Afghanistan for the 4 years that follow that period.
So how the DFID projects is going in Afghanistan, in which parts of Afghanistan do you focus mostly?
We're focused very much on the national picture. So we are trying to provide assistance to all parts of Afghanistan. So 80% of the budget that we have is focused on national programs, and 20% of the budget is focused on Helmand. Of course, you know that there are UK troops in Helmand, and Helmand is also a very poor province. There are many things that need to be done. So we use some of our resources just for Helmand, but the vast majority of our assistance is helping people in all parts of the country. So one of my colleagues last week was in Bamiyan, and we are providing some work in assistance in Bamiyan. Some of our assistance is also at play in Herat, but in all parts of the country.
It means that 20% of your projects is going on Helmand because of presence you guys troops in Helmand. So in Helmand, in a decade, what is the change? So you see the lack of the jobs is still at a high level, and also poverty is severe in the most of this province.
Correct. But there is progress too. So, you know, I visited Helmand 2 years ago. I spent 3 days in Helmand last year. I was in Helmand again in March this year, and I was in Helmand this weekend just past for 2 days. So I visited periodically to see how things are, and I can tell you that over that period there is real progress. Of course, the first thing has to be security. Without security, it is not possible to do anything else. And what we've seen in central Helmand, which covers something like 80% of the population who live in Helmand, in central Helmand there has been a very significant improvement in security. And you can see that. So for example, when you fly to Bost, there are now 3 commercial flights every week, I think, going to Bost Airport, which is amazing, really. But when you drive from Bost into Lashkargah, in the period of 1 year, you can see the change in the economy. So there are many more businesses open, there are many more shops open, they're busy. There are people with parking lots full of motorcycles, of tractors, of cars that they've put there to sell. And you know, businessmen, they only put their money into stock and hold stock when they know that they're going to do some business. So that's a sign of confidence.
But we still have most of the people that they have moved from Helmand because of the bad security, and they are still in Kabul, and they're from from past few years in Kabul, and they can't go back to Helmand. So how do you say that it is progress and it has been better, and the situation has been better in Helmand?
No, the situation of course has to be better still. There is still a lot to do. But you know, when I was there this weekend, I spoke not just to the provincial authorities and the district governor and so on, but I also spoke to students. I met teachers, I met people who work for NGOs, I met some business people. And what they tell me is that in the last year, in the last 18 months, their lives have improved. The security has improved. They're able to go about their business better than before. But of course, they're not satisfied. They still want the security to be better still. This is a process. It takes time. But as you know, Lashkargah transitioned to Afghan security control in July, so just some few weeks ago. And so far, we have not seen any terrible attacks.
Okay. So the situation in Helmand was acceptable for you, and you are happy for that, for the change that you saw?
I'm happy for the improvement that we've seen so far, but of course, I wish for better progress. And I wish for those people who have left Helmand to be able to return to their homes and to restart their lives there. And I wish for those people who have left Helmand to be able to return to their homes and to restart their lives there. There is still a lot to do.
Okay, so what is the biggest project has been completed by the UK in Afghanistan?
In Afghanistan, I think the first thing to say is that the UK doesn't usually spend lots of money on single big projects. Okay, because we're not really in the business of building one big tower or one big bridge and saying, this is it. Our objective is to change the lives of the people. And you change the lives of the people not through one bridge or one big road, but by doing lots of things. Okay, so there isn't one big project that I can point to and say, this is it. But if you go to Helmand, there are many roads that we've built. There are many schools that have been opened with UK assistance in Helmand, but also across the country. The money that we've put into the Afghan Reconstruction Trust Fund has improved health. So I think in 2002, there was maybe 10% of the population could access health. Today, it's something like 85%. That's a result of UK aid. Now, for me, that is a big achievement. It's not about one clinic or two clinics. It's actually about impacting the lives of 85% of the population. Similarly, in the fields of agriculture, in all sorts of fields, we see lives beginning to change. In education, at the time of the Taliban, when they fell, perhaps there were 1 million children in school. Today, it is up to 6 million. That has again been achieved with contributions from the UK government.
In 2008 and 2009, the Daily Telegraph reported that most of the UK help and support and money is going to the unsuccessful projects in Afghanistan. So if that were true, so is there any changes, and do you have a good control on your money for going to the projects in Afghanistan?
We have very careful controls on our resources. Yeah, I'm responsible for spending UK taxpayers' money. Okay, I think in your language there's a word amanat. It's, you know, this is the UK taxpayers' amanat. They give me this money. Of course, they would keep the money themselves, but if they trust us to spend their money, we have to spend it well. So we have, in the way that we manage our resources, we have very careful checks and balances. We design our projects very carefully. We then monitor them once a year, sometimes more frequently. If they're not working, we close them down. If they need to improve, we try to improve them. If we need to change the staff, we change the staff. And we're always very careful about the risk of corruption. Because at the end of the day, as I said, this is the UK taxpayers' money. I can't waste their money. So we have systems in place which mean that we can follow the pounds, we can audit the money.
So you refuse that
absolutely,
most of the money went to the unsuccess?
Absolutely, that's simply not true. I mean, you know, we can go for a tour after your program, and I will show you some of the things that we have achieved in this country. Of course, there are problems. You know, Afghanistan is a difficult environment in which to work. Security is difficult. The government systems are weak. The capacity is thin. Literacy is low. Now, that makes it a very difficult environment. It means that some of the things that we have to do here cost more to do here than they do in another country. But we are committed to the Afghan people, and we're committed to the long-term future of Afghanistan. So we are ready to make that investment.
Okay. There were reports after the crisis that the Kabul Bank, the biggest private bank in Afghanistan, found the UK government was decided to stop their help, or maybe for some times. So it was like more than 6 months ago. So it is still going on, or it has been stopped? So how about that problem?
Yes, the Kabul Bank crisis was a very major problem. I'm sure you know about it. I'm sure your viewers know about it. The bank was run in a very bad way. It was run corruptly. Some people looted a lot of money. They were politically well-known people, well-connected people. And so this was an example of corruption that just could not be ignored. It cannot be ignored. And therefore we felt that we had to really send a very strong signal that corruption on this scale is not acceptable. So we stopped our contributions to the Afghan Reconstruction Trust Fund. Okay, that's the main vehicle that we use to partner with the Afghan government. In our last financial year, so our financial year ends in March of each year. So in our previous financial year, we were due to contribute £85 million to the ARTF. And we stopped those contributions. Okay. And what we said to the government was that you need to clean up the bank. You need to put in place better regulation so that this sort of problem cannot occur again. Okay. And you need to put your financial in to the best of your abilities needs to be recovered. I think that's a reasonable position. Okay. Now, so progress on this has been slower.
So do you think now this progress has been done?
A lot of progress has been made. A lot of progress has been made.
So what about your aids and your money? Is it still stopped, or?
No, we are. So I should also say that of the rest of our program, of course, continued. So this was one portion that we stopped. We said that if the government can do what is needed, we will even try to recover that £85 million from our last year. Okay. Now, progress has been good during the course of this year. The Kabul Bank has been put into receivership, yeah. And it has been split into two banks: the bad bank and the good bank. And the good bank is operative again and is working fine, I understand from my colleagues. Some measures have been taken against those people who did wrong. There is still more to do. Some money has been recovered. There is more money to recover. But also some measures have been taken to strengthen the banking sector. Again, there is more to do. We've been working very closely with the International Monetary Fund, the IMF, on these issues. And the IMF have a mission in Afghanistan this week, where they are discussing with the Afghan government and the central bank, the DAB bank, the progress on this set of issues. And as soon as the IMF tell us that this problem is now behind us, we will resume our assistance in full.
Okay, so let's talk about 2014. So when the security responsibility goes from the foreign troops to Afghans. So what will happen in after 2014 with the international efforts, development efforts for Afghanistan?
As I said to you earlier, we are committed to Afghanistan for the long term. UK development assistance is driven by the needs of the country and by poverty. Afghanistan, after 3 decades of war, is a very poor country. It will take many years to address the problems that Afghanistan faces. They cannot all be dealt with in the next 3 years. So on the UK side, we are committed for the long term. If we need to be here for 10 years or 20 years or 30 years, we are committed to work the long term. If we need to be here for 10 years or 20 years or 30 years, we are committed to work with the authorities to benefit the Afghan people.
So as now, you guys have a PRT team in Helmand province in Lashkargah. So do you guys have a PRT team after 2014 also in Helmand?
No. I don't think we will have a PRT team in Helmand after 2014. But I don't think a PRT team will be needed either. You see, the transition is about security transition. And the objective of the international community is to work with the Afghan authorities and the ANSF and so on, so that Afghanistan can take care of its own security needs. Now, the PRT was put in place because there were challenges with the structure of government and the presence of government and so on. But what we see over the last 2 or 3 years especially is that we have a good provincial governor in Helmand. He has a good administrative team around him. There are district governors in 11 of the 14 districts. The line ministry representatives are present. The commercial airport is open at Bust. The PRT is now getting out of the business of doing things itself, but instead it is working with the governor to advise, to help him actually change Helmand.
Okay, so most of the projects after 2014 will going on through the Afghan government, and it will spend through by Afghan government, and
not completely,
yeah.
But yes, but we will work in partnership with the Afghan government. But this is a very important point. You see, the UK development program is £178 million. That's a lot of money, but it can't change the lives of 28 million people. The only authorities that there are who can change the lives of so many people is the Afghan government. They collect taxes, they need to spend that money well. They need to deliver services to their people. So our objective is to work in partnership with the government so that we get best value from our money, but also they get best value from the taxpayers' money of you and your viewers. So our objective is to work in partnership with the government so that we get best value from our money, but also they get best value from the taxpayers' money of you and your viewers.
Let's talk about the Kabul conference. In Kabul conference last year, the international community agreed that they will spend 50% of their supports and money through the Afghan government. But it has not been done still. 20% of the aids going by the Afghan government, but still 30% is not going by the Afghan government. So what was the main concern? Is it because of the corruption or lack of capacity in Afghan government?
There are a number of elements to this problem. Of course, people worry about corruption, they worry about the efficiency of systems and so on. But actually, the systems of the Afghan government are now not too bad. And there are mechanisms, for example, the AARTF, which work with and through government, but where in fact you can maintain good audit and good monitoring so that you avoid the risks of corruption. But of course, decisions by donors are made on that basis, but also on the basis of wider considerations in terms of where they are focused, on their priorities and so on. Now, I can't speak for all donors. You will have to interview my colleagues from other countries. But speaking for the UK, I can tell you that we have met the 50%. So more than 50% of UK aid does go through Afghan government systems, and we hope to increase that. But this issue that we talked about earlier, the IMF program.
You're not
and so on
concerned
is very
about
important.
the corruption in Afghanistan. You said it is a good system in Afghan government.
No, that's not what I said. What I said was that the system is not bad, that we can work with it, and that there are checks and balances in place for us to be able to monitor the resources that we commit. Okay? The system can be better, and we of course worry about corruption. So we were talking about the Kabul Bank. That's an example of terrible corruption, and there were consequences, and we acted on that basis. Corruption is a deep-seated problem in Afghanistan, but also in this region. Pakistan and India and Bangladesh and other countries have their share of corruption too. And there are things that need to be done to address that. And again, we are working on those issues. So whilst the systems are not bad, they can be better. So we are working with the World Bank to improve the public financial system. We are working with our international partners and the Afghan authorities to strengthen the High Office of Oversight. We've set up this monitoring committee of the international experts to look at corruption. So we're looking at ways, we're working with community-based groups so that they can monitor what they receive and highlight examples of corruption and seek for those to be corrected. So there is a lot of work to do on this. There is a big problem with corruption in this country. But there are ways, nevertheless, to deliver good assistance in this context. It is hard, but it's possible, and we're doing it.
Okay. President Karzai says that most of the foreign aid is misused by foreigners. It means that the foreigners are also they are joined in corruption in Afghanistan. Do you agree?
With respect, I don't wish to disagree with the President, but certainly in the case of UK aid, and I can't speak for all countries here, yes? But speaking for UK aid, I don't believe that our aid is misused. As I said, there are some difficult circumstances in Afghanistan. The security costs are high, and therefore we have to pay high salaries to get people to come and work here. The consultancy rates and so on are difficult, and so there are some problems. It means that the cost of delivering, say, 1 kilometer of road in Afghanistan is much higher than delivering 1 kilometer of road in India or in Iran or in another neighboring country. Now, of course, I don't like that. But our choice is, do we insist on those rates and therefore we don't build the road, or do we build the road? Afghanistan needs urgent development. It needs security, it needs a political progress, but it needs better governance and better development to support progress. So at some level we have to make some tough choices, and we are making those choices, and sometimes we spend more on that 1 kilometer of road than we would like, but it's necessary because that road means that people can do business, they can drive to the clinic, it changes their lives. So I hope that over time we will get better efficiency from our money, but our aid is not being wasted because, as I said, we design our projects carefully, we monitor them carefully, and we're protecting the UK's taxpayers' money.
You will have heard about the flight of capital from Afghanistan. So do you think your monies were not inside these monies that they were going out from Afghanistan?
But this is where you have to understand how economic flows work. Okay, the money that the UK government brings into Afghanistan is committed to particular programs and particular projects. Okay, and I am confident that our money is spent on the projects and the programs that we have designed, and I'm confident that they deliver real impact to people's lives. Okay, now in the aggregate, there is a lot of foreign exchange coming into this country. Yeah, and there are people in this country who wish to take their money out, and they will buy their dollars or their yen or whatever currency they wish on the open market. And of course, the level of foreign flows that are coming into the country make it slightly cheaper for them to do that. But in terms of our money, no, I'm sure that our money is not being used for capital flight. But I should also say that capital flight is not a problem unique to Afghanistan. Yeah? Many countries have suffered this and are suffering this issue. The reason that people take their money out of their country is because they are not confident about the future. Different things. So to address that capital flight, what we need to do is to help Afghanistan progress. We need to deal with the security. We need to see better politics. We need to see better governance. We need to give people confidence so that instead of putting their money in London or New York, they put their money in Kabul and Herat and Mazar-e-Sharif and these places, and they invest for the future of their own country.
Thank you. Let me ask you my last question. You said you guys are committed for the long term with the Afghan people and Afghan government. So do you see any limitation for that, or for how many years or something like this, or not? Just it depends on Afghan development, Afghanistan's development.
We are here for the long term. Okay, we are committed to the Afghan people. We are committed to working with the Afghan authorities to turn around the legacy of 30 years of war. We are committed to a better future for the Afghan people. Of course, we need security. We need good politics. We need good governance. In that environment, international assistance can be used well. And we will continue to work here for the next 10 years, the next 20 years, the next 30 years.
No limitation for that.
Until Afghanistan is really ready to stand on its own feet and can take care of its own needs.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Malik, for being with us.
It's a pleasure. Thank you for having me, and I wish your viewers well.
Thanks. سپاسگزار هستم از شما که گفتگوی ما را دنبال کردین. تا دیدار دیگر، خدا نگهدار.